this video we will discuss about TConnect, but let's first go through a presentation. The challenge relates to IP addresses provided by the GSM operator. Most of the time, the GSM network constitutes a private network. Through address and port translation, it will connect to Internet, which will allow T-Box to connect to Internet, but it will not allow a client to access T-Box as T-Box is behind a private network. The solution is TConnect. TConnect embeds an OpenVPN server, and this OpenVPN server will provide a private network between T-Box and TConnect. So each T-Box will be assigned a private network handled by TConnect. A client, instead of having to connect to T-Box directly, it will connect through TConnect, and through TConnect it will access the T-Box. It can also be used to centralize access to T-Box even in a private network. TConnect can be installed in the cloud, while it provides a public access as in the cloud we are on Internet. It allows remote access to TConnect configuration, can be provided as a service to the customer, and this secures the running of TConnect also, because it does not depend on a PC in your company. Let's take a look to the topology. So we have remote outstations. Well, outstation represent T-Box. So we have remote outstation. Whichever IP address they have, whichever APN they have, they will connect to TConnect. Station can also be local. We can have as many clients as we want. Through TConnect, they will be able to access T-Box. We can have devices behind T-Box, and T-Box will act as a gateway to access web pages behind T-Box. If you have a SCADA and you want any protocol to be accessible to T-Box, the SCADA can go through TConnect to access the T-Box. And finally, we can deploy list of users and application automatically to T-Box. In summary, T-Box constitutes a facilitator of connections. But let's first install and run TConnect and see its configuration. To install TConnect, there is a setup, but there is a prerequisite. You have first to create a user account dedicated for TConnect. In the TConnect administration guide, I explain how to do it. You have to go to Manage Your Account, and you have to create a TConnect user. And very important, the type standard user. So no administrator, standard user. I have done that already, so I can run the setup, and I will have to declare this user while installing TConnect. TConnect is accessible through a browser using then HTTP and HTTPS, so you can define which port you use. If there is no other web server on your machine, just leave the default HTTP and HTTPS port, and also VPN is installed automatically during the setup. Then you select your user you have created. I have created a user called TConnect user, no domain, and I put the password. Next. And installation can start. Once installation is finished, I will open a browser to access TConnect. So I open a browser, for instance Chrome, and I just type localhost. TConnect runs as a service and hosts a web server. Then to access TConnect, you will use a browser. If you run the browser on the machine where TConnect has been installed, you will type the URL localhost. Otherwise, you will type the IP address or name of the PC that runs TConnect, if it is on the cloud, for instance. Now you can see that automatically it switched to HTTPS and that the connection is not secure. So I explain in the TConnect admin guide either how to use your own certificates or to register the certificate of TConnect. Then I will do that and I will restart TConnect. TConnect also needs some firewall exception on the PC it runs. So you go into the firewall advanced settings, into the inbound rules, and we must add an exception to allow OpenVPN communication. So it uses TCP port 1194. And for HTTPS communication, you have to allow TCP port 443. I have restarted the browser, this time with a secure connection, and I am able to log in TConnect. I see the version of TConnect here in the bottom, and the default login is admin, and I am ready to configure TConnect. I have a root directory in which I will be able to add multiple directories corresponding to my outstations. And I have these 3 lines to configure TConnect. Let's take a look to administration, the license. The license is based on a number of outstation, typically T-box. Then we can add additional subnets, which will allow to develop separate VPN subnets in case we host multiple different customers that we want to provide access through TConnect. It is important that each customer has a different subnet. In users, I have my admin account that I can edit and modify. And in the interfaces, I have the different interfaces that TConnect will use to communicate to T-box. Ethernet is by default present, and I can add a VPN interface if I want to communicate to the T-box through VPN. I name it, for instance, VPN. I select it's a VPN server, and I select the IP address of TConnect. So this is the IP address the T-box have to type to access TConnect. In the case of this video here, I make everything in my local subnet. So this IP address is the IP address of my PC. Would you have TConnect installed on Internet, you would put the IP address of TConnect on Internet. Then I select which subnet VPN addresses will take. They will be in the subnet 10.8.0.1 that I can modify, but I leave it like that. And in this subnet, I allow 20 slots, meaning 20 different IP addresses, knowing that I have a license here for 100 outstation. So I can increase this number of, for instance, 50 if I have an application with 50 T-box. And I click apply. We can see a notification here. The notification just to indicate that the VPN is just starting. Let's now take a look to the different topologies. There are 2 main modes of communication, the mode active and the mode passive. Active in regards to TConnect. So it means that TConnect will take the initiative of the connection. Passive means that the T-box will take the initiative of the connection. Let's first look to the active mode. Then it means TConnect takes the initiative of the connection to the T-box exclusively in HTTPS communication. Let's take a look to the application that we will use to test this. So it means that we have activated the HTTPS protocol in T-Box. For the example here, I have generated the certificate from Twinsoft, and I have added a web form that we can access through TConnect. I send this to T-Box, and important, we will see afterwards, includes program source and web file inside T-Box. Once T-Box has restarted, we can go back to TConnect. In order to go back to the root, we can click on the TConnect icon and we are back into the root. Here we can create a folder. So I will call it training. And in this folder, I will create a station. So I double click on training. I right click and I click add an out station. We can see here the mode of registration, active or passive. I give a name, I call it active, and in endpoints I will type the IP address of my T-Box through Ethernet, because I communicate through Ethernet. And I click apply, and the station is created, and you see here again I have a notification, because any station need to be authorized in TConnect. So I have to click on this V to authorize the station. Now that the station is authorized, TConnect will allow to connect to this station. It will take some time, and I will have a sign here indicating that the station is now available. After a few seconds, if I refresh the view, I will see now that my station is connected, and let's see what we can do with it. When you click on the station, on the right side, you see the different menus to access the station. Well, you can view info, so you see information about the station. For instance, we can see the name of the station, the programmer, the version. In the firmware, you can see all the versions of the different Linux modules and operating system which are in T-Box. In hardware, you can see what cards are present in the system. In general, we can see, well, an information about the certificate, which is not validated. This relates to the HTTPS certificate. So the one that I have declared inside the T-Box, well, I've used a certificate which is not recognized because it's a homemade certificate, which is here. It's this HTTPS certificate. So this is for the information. Now I can view web page. I can either click here, or if you just double click the station, it also opens the web page. So this is a web form that is at the moment active in the T-Box. I can view diagnostics. So view the diagnostic. It's the same as the diagnostic we have already seen in the video 15 about the support and the way to debug information in T-Box, so we can access all the logs in T-Box. Then update with Twinsoft. TConnect allows to update the application. So first you have to install a client. So you see here at the bottom you have a link to install the client. So I have done it already. So I can just now click update here. It will prompt me either to open a document if the application is on my PC, or to download the source from T-Box. So that's why I mentioned it's important to send the source of the program inside T-Box. Then everything will be available directly from the T-Box. So it is now communicating to the T-Box, is connecting to SSH, and it will retrieve the application from the T-Box. Download the source. I will save this into this temporary directory. And now my application test active is open. You see that in the status bar I am connected through TConnect, And I can modify the application. For instance, I can add an analog tag, analog 01. I can initialize it to 123. I can save. I can open the web form. I can put a dynamic label here, for instance, and I can declare this tag, analog 01. I save, and I send all this to T-Box. Once T-Box has restarted, let's take a look into TConnect. I double-click active, and I see that now my new tag is available into the web form. It might be that you don't see it because there is a refresh problem of the page. This is because TConnect handles a cache mechanism to improve data throughput. It means that the page needs to be refreshed, and to force the refresh of a page you have to go to the information and you make a force com. When you force the communication, the page will be totally refreshed. Let's take a look to the next topology, the passive Ethernet topology, meaning T-Box will connect to TConnect through Ethernet. T-Box will take the initiative. So this requires on TConnect to create an account in order to be allowed to register to TConnect. So let's do this. First, let's remove this station because at the moment for this video I use the same T-Box for all kinds of connections. So to make sure I do not multiply identical T-Boxes, let's then go to the administration to create this account that the T-Box will connect to. So in administration we have an outstation tab, and there I will create a new account. I give a name, I will call it T-Box ETH, like Ethernet. I put a password, I repeat the password, and I define a folder where the T-Box will be created, and I select a subnet and I click apply. This account I have to create it in my TwinSoft application, and in TwinSoft I will go to IP parameters, TConnect server, and I have created already. So this is the IP address of my PC because I work on my local subnet. The name of the interface in TConnect is Ethernet, and then the login and password I have created in TConnect. Let's send this to T-Box and see the result in TConnect when T-Box restarts. T-Box has restarted, so let's see in TConnect the result. So to go back to the main view, you just click the TConnect icon. So you are back in the root and we are in the training, and the station will be created automatically in the folder. We first receive a notification there is a new demand of a T-Box. So you authorize the T-Box, and at next attempt the T-Box will be created into TConnect. And we will have to refresh the view because this is a browser. Here it is with its name. It's now called Ethernet. And we have the same access to the same menus as we had with the other station. Advantages of this topology. The T-Box, they are created automatically in TConnect. So once you install a T-Box on the field, if it has the right setting to TConnect, it will automatically appear in TConnect, and you will just have to authorize it in TConnect. Also, if you work with the DHCP settings for the Ethernet in T-Box, then you don't know what IP address T-Box will have. So T-Box will take the initiative of the connection, and TConnect will use the right IP address to connect to T-Box. Let's take a look to our third topology, so the passive VPN. So T-Box will initiate the connection to TConnect, and TConnect will provide the VPN certificates to have a private VPN connection with the T-Box. So we need to create an account in TConnect associated to the VPN subnet and the equivalent in T-Box. Let's first take a look into TConnect. First, I will delete this station to prevent having issues, because I use the same T-Box for all type of connections. So I go to the administration, I go to the outstation, and I will now create a new T-Box user. I will call it T-Box VPN. Put a password. Select a folder. I will select the same training folder in which the station will be automatically created, and select the subnet I use. In this case, I will use the VPN subnet, not the Ethernet. Let's take a look now in TwinSoft. I have an application dedicated for this topology, and in which I have created a VPN configuration. And when you create a VPN configuration, it can be associated to TConnect. So you just have to set the IP address you use to connect to TConnect. In my case, as I work on my local subnet, it will be Ethernet, but typically it should be the GSM, because this is the typical topology you would use when you have remote access to T-Box. In the TConnect settings, I put the name of my interface, VPN, and the account I have defined into TConnect. Let's send this to T-Box. Once T-Box has restarted, let's take a look into TConnect. So click on the TConnect icon, click on double-click training, and we will first have a notification that a new station has been detected by TConnect. We will have to validate, to authorize it, and then it will be available. So here is the notification. I authorize the station, and at next try, the station will be available. If I take a look into TwinSoft, we can define communication variable links to our TConnect connection. So the TConnect connection constitutes a communication port, and as in any communication port, we can define communication variable, and one is the IP address and the other one is the state. So when the T-Box will reconnect, after 1 minute, maximum 1 minute, we will get an IP address from TConnect in the subnet we had defined, which was 10.8.something. Now we can see that the state has changed, so there is a new attempt of connecting. I can change the format of this IP address, display as IP address. Here it is, 10.8.0.2. So if I go back to TConnect, if I refresh my view, F5, I can now see my station VPN, and I have the same information as I had with the other topologies. Here in the certificates, I have more certificates because I have access to the certificate used by TConnect to establish the VPN connection. But you see on T-Box side, on TwinSoft side, I didn't have to define anything, just the account to connect to in TConnect. Same hardware, same information about the application, and the same access to the web page that I have in my station. Let's go back to our training application to discuss about access control. I have defined the same VPN connection for TConnect with its communication variables, and this TConnect entry constitutes a communication port. So if we want to communicate to T-Box through this communication port, as far as firewalls are concerned, we have to allow communication through this new communication port, which is available here. So I will allow Modbus, I will allow SSH, required for reprogramming T-Box, I will allow HTTPS for VPN configuration and communication, and I also will allow HTTP in case it still works with HTTP. As far as programming T-Box is concerned, if we want to allow reprogramming T-Box through TConnect, we also have to allow in protection TConnect as programming port. We click OK, and we can send this now to T-Box. T-Box has restarted and is synchronized to TConnect. So if I double click on my station, I will see the page as we have defined previously in the web form. And as you can say, you are systematically as engineer. So there is no login anymore at this stage because the access level of TConnect has priority on the one in T-Box. So you see we are systematically logged as engineer. It means that we have to define in TConnect users, and those users will be used to log to T-Box. So let's do this. So let's go to the administration, and we will first create a group. A group can correspond to a company, or it can correspond to a series of users with identical access level, or in our case, it will constitute the group training with the users that can access the T-Box training. So I create the group. Then I create users. And in the users, I will create, as I have done in T-Box, I will create a users engineer and I will create a user operator. So I will call one, I will call it training eng, and the password is engineer, and it is associated to the group training. I do the same for operator, so I call it training op, and it's operator, and it's also from the group training. Apply. Now I click on TConnect to go back to the root, and I will associate those users to the folder. You can associate it to a station, so you right click and you see you have permissions that you can allow to a station. But if you do it to the folder, it will be applied systematically to all stations in this folder. So I will apply permission to view. So who can view this T-Box, this folder? Well, I will add, and I'll say the group training. So anyone in this group can see the stations in this folder. Now, who can update the training? The update means allow to grant a station coming in TConnect. So who can do that? Also the group training. Then we will add access level. And this will be identical to what we have defined inside T-Box. So if I go here, I will select access level 2. This is to training operator. And access level 3 will be given to training engineer. Now, from TConnect, I will have now the same access as I have with T-Box. Then we will log with those two users. So first I have to log out and then log in as operator first. Log in, and now when I go to my web forms, I see that I am as an operator and I have access only to the water. I can change the valves, but I cannot activate the pump. Only an engineer can, and I have no access also to maintenance. Now let's log as engineer. So log out, engineer, log in, and I go to the web form again, and now I am effectively as engineer and I have access to the maintenance page, and I can change the name of the station. Okay. Next subject, the user synchronization. The idea is to have the same users in TConnect as in TBox. So first we have in TwinSoft to declare a dedicated user to allow TConnect to synchronize users inside TBox. So in order to allow TConnect entering into TBox to modify the users, we have to create a dedicated user in the users list, and this user will be with a level user sync, and I will call it, for instance, TConnect with a password. I create it and I send this to TBox. In TConnect, I have to first go back to administration and I will activate the user synchronization. I go to administration, I go to general, and I have here a menu to enable user synchronization, and I have to put the same account as I have defined into TBox. So the name is the same, and then I have to enter the password. And I click apply. Configuration successfully ended. Let's now take a look to our TBox. Our TBox has successfully restarted. It's not connected yet to TConnect, but when it is connected to TConnect, the users will be automatically synchronized. We can see from the communication variable that TBox has restarted. Now let's take a look into TConnect. So in TConnect we have several logs, and if I go into the TConnect server, I can see somewhere here. When TBox has reconnected to TConnect, automatically the users have been synced with the station here, John. So what does this change? For TConnect, nothing. So we have exactly the same access as we had before. According to what we are logged, engineer or operator, we will see the corresponding view. What has changed is the access to TBox itself. If I connect through Ethernet and type the IP address of TBox, it opens the login page. If I try to log using the login as I have defined them into my TwinSoft application, this will not work anymore, because the users in TBox have been resynchronized by the one in TConnect, meaning that existing users have been replaced by the one in TConnect. So I have now to log using training engineer, for instance. Or I could do the same with the operator. and I am now effectively logged as an engineer, and I can change information into my T-box according to my access level. This provides an easy deployment of users based on the folder, so it means to a group of T-box, and automatically, as soon as the users are changed in the directory, they will be automatically synchronized to T-box. Then very easy to add, but also to remove users. As we talk about deployment, it is also possible to deploy automatically application and firmware into T-box from TConnect. So the idea that you declare the application in TConnect, and TConnect will take in charge the sending and the starting of the application inside T-box. There is a menu for that. In general, we have to activate the application and firmware deployment. Once we have done that, if I go back into my root and station, I see that I have a new menu, which is schedule a new update. I will have to select a file, which represents the application to send to T-box, and a date for the installation in T-box. The sending will happen as soon as I have activated the schedule, but the installation will happen at the date selected here. So it means I can decide today that a new program should be installed in T-box tomorrow. The program will be sent today, and the installation will be done tomorrow. First, let's create this TwinSoft application. So imagine that I want to add a tag into my application. So I just create a new tag, which is not in T-box yet, and I will save it as a plug and go. And when I save as plug and go, I have an option, generate for TConnect. I select this option, and it prompts me to create the file as a zip file. Okay, let's name it TConnect for the moment. We will have to change the name afterwards, but let's first create this file. Okay, I reckon the file, and my plug and go has been created successfully, and I can now declare this file into TConnect. So let's go back to TConnect. The file that I have to select here, it must be named according to the station I want to update. So the station here is a unique identifier that you can see here under its name, and the unique identifier is based on the MAC address of the T-box. 076E58, this must be the name of my zip file. So let's open my zip and let's rename it 076E58. I have my file. So here I can browse and select the file. I take it, select the date. It's 2 p.m. at the moment, so 2 p.m. 30. Schedule. Now I will have to wait 2:30 to check that my T-box has effectively been updated with the new application. It is now 2:34, so let's check whether the update has worked properly. So we can check that from the log TConnect server, and then we would have an information here at 2:32 the update is correctly installed on John. And if I look into my TwinSoft application now, that well, I see that this tag here is not available. So the T-box has been properly updated by TConnect. Let's now take a look to T-box when it is used as a gateway. You can see in my station here that I have this link to create a new remote outstation. This appears because in my TwinSoft application I have defined a virtual server rule. At the time I did that to access a camera behind T-box. Now let's imagine that I have replaced this camera with an LT2 application, and I want to access this LT2 because imagine it has no GSM, it just has a local connectivity to my MS32, and I want through the MS32 access my LT2. So I have defined an HTML page that I have named LT2, and I will access this LT2 page through my MS32. So first I have to define a virtual server rule. Okay, I name it camera, I can just rename it LT2. This is just a name anyway. So any incoming port with 8080 will be forwarded to IP of my LT2 with the port 80. So pure HTTP protocol. Remember that we have defined firewall rules, so I have to update those firewall rules. So the port 8080, I have also to allow it on the TConnect interface. And also the forwarding rules, because I will forward information from TConnect to the Ethernet port. So I have to adapt here my forward rule from COM8, change to TConnect, from TConnect connection to COM3. Okay, this is now ready, and I can send this to T-Box. I have to log, of course, I have to log effectively. And remember, with the new login, as defined in TConnect, I'm now logged as engineer, and I can now safely send the application. Back in TConnect, let's now click on Create New Outstation. I will call it LT2. The gateway is the station John effectively. The protocol is HTTP. The page is lt2.html. So I will apply, and you see I've got a new station with a different icon to make distinction between gateway and remote station. And now if I double click on this station, I should see the HTML page which is in the LT2. And effectively, I do not communicate now to the CPU32, but I communicate to the LT2 through the MS32. Last but not least, the SCADA outstation. So the idea is that if you have a SCADA and you want to communicate to T-Box remotely using any protocol, you can take advantage of the OpenVPN of TConnect. For this example here, I have updated my application to communicate to internet to an Amazon Web Service that we have. So I have in TwinSoft, I have updated my TConnect connection to go now to Amazon instead of going to my local PC. And for this example, I use OPC UA. So I have added an add-on OPC UA to communicate with the SCADA. So I have sent this to T-Box. In TConnect, I have created a SCADA outstation. Right-click, create a SCADA outstation, and this will provide you a VPN configuration. This VPN configuration, I run it onto my PC. Here it is. So I am connected to the same Amazon IP addresses, and I have a private IP in the same subnet of my T-Box 10.8.7.10, knowing that the IP address of T-Box is 10.8.7.1. And then I run UA Expert, which is a OPC UA client that you can use to test the OPC UA communication. And I am now connected to my T-Box, which has address 10.8.7.1. And we can see the second running. And if I change the start and the stop, we can see here the value changing. So this is it for this presentation of the features. Let's take a last look to the presentation just to summarize the features that we have seen. So TConnect is able to connect locally to devices, passive or active connection. Remote T-Box will take the initiative of the connection. Client will access any T-Box through TConnect, local or remote. TConnect is able to deploy users and application. T-Box as a gateway allows to access any HTML pages behind T-Box. And finally, a SCADA can take advantage of OpenVPN to access T-Box with any protocol. That's it for this video. No exercise, no question, and I hope it was interesting. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.